Hello, everybody, and good evening. My name is Eric Wells, and welcome to Faces of NextGen Live. This is the YouTube show where twice a month or so, we sit down with fellow genealogists and get to know them, what got them interested, and what they're up to, what some of their passions are. Again, I'm Eric Wells. I'm the education chair for the NextGen Genealogy Network, and also owner of Legacy Left Right. Today we've got another great interview headed your way, and for all of those in the chat room, feel free to throw out some of your questions my way, and I'll sprinkle them throughout the interview. But today I am so excited. We get to talk to Paul Woodbury of Legacy Tree. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Where are you sitting right now?
I am sitting in my home office in Provo, Utah.
All the way from Provo, Utah. I'm about 18 hours from you in Springfield, Missouri. So this is kind of cool. I love being able to talk to people all over the United States and the world even.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so just before we connected, you were on the verge of a really big discovery. Did you happen to break through a brick wall at all?
I did. I just, right when you called, I had just solved an adoption case. So I was pretty excited about that. I'm still kind of over the moon on it. So,
so I'm catching you at a good time.
Yeah, you're catching me at a good time. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry to have to like break in and cut right in the middle of your great discovery.
It's all good. It's all good.
So, how old are you? Like, what's your age range?
So I am 27 years old. I turn 28 next month. Yeah.
And how long have you been doing this genealogy stuff?
I started doing genealogy when doing genealogy when I was 8 years old. My grandparents gave us family history binders for Christmas to all of the grandchildren. And that really sparked my interest. That's how I got started. Of course, when I first got started in genealogy to me was looking at pedigree charts online and copying them onto my own pedigree charts. I didn't really understand sources. I didn't understand research. So that was doing genealogy for me. So, but professionally, I've been doing it since 2014.
Oh, cool! Wow. Melanie asked about your case. Is it a personal adoption case for a client?
It's for a client, so unfortunately, I can't broadcast information about it. But
tell us all about it. Give us their name.
Yeah, unfortunately, no.
So you take on clients. You work for Legacy Tree then?
I do. I work for Legacy Tree Genealogists. We're a client research firm based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. And what's really nice about Legacy Tree is it's a virtual office. We all work from home, and we'll meet for meetings online occasionally. And I think the last time I had to attend an in-person meeting was maybe last year. So it's really great to be able to work from home, enjoy that flexibility, also while I am attending school and working full-time, attending school full-time, and then we also have a brand new baby, so I get to help with that.
Congratulations!
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been working for Legacy Tree since 2014 then, or?
When I first graduated from Brigham Young University, I started out doing my own business. And I did that for about a year until I realized how much I actually had to pay in self-employment tax. And then I thought, maybe I'll work for somebody else and let them deal with the client communications, with the organization, with the business side, and I can really focus on what I love, which is research.
Okay, got it. And do you have any specific areas of interest that you like to focus on with your research?
So above all, I love genetic genealogy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I decided I wanted to do when I was 16. I saw a PBS special it was African American Lives with Henry Louis Gates Jr. And I remember seeing that and seeing how they were using traditional genealogical evidence as well as DNA evidence to tell the stories of these African American celebrities and their family history. And I saw that and I thought, that is amazing. That's what I want to do. So with that end, I attended Brigham Young University. I majored in my bachelor's degree is in genetics, and then my minor was in family history. Always with the intention of entering this amazing field.
Wow.
So yeah, I just love genetic genealogy. And the nice thing about the BYU program for genealogy is that they also have a geographic specialty that you get to proclaim as your emphasis. And at first I started out in Swedish and Norwegian, the Scandinavian research, but then one of my professors said, hey, you should consider looking into French research because we're going on a study abroad next year and you should come. So then I switched to French research. So I love Scandinavian French research.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at your APG profile, and it says that you can speak English, obviously, French, Portuguese, and Spanish too.
So I can speak Spanish really well, I can speak French pretty well, and I can speak Portuguese only very poorly.
Can you read it easier?
I can read Portuguese pretty well, yeah.
Okay, and I would imagine you have to search through some handwritten documents when it comes to, obviously with genealogy and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the Portuguese is a lot easier to read than it is to speak. They just have kind of weird rules. I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Is all of your Portuguese you friend, is it mostly in Portugal itself, or is it in some of the colony like Brazil or something like that?
So a little bit of the Portuguese research I've done, mostly Brazil, although I have done I've done a little bit of Portugal and as well as a little bit of Cape Verde Islands.
Oh, okay, got it.
And the Azores. So. Yeah.
So you've been doing a ton of research, obviously, and it's really impressive to hear that you knew exactly what you wanted to do, as not only since you were 8, but even more succinctly when you were 16, and you were just sound like you were driven and just went towards it. Do you have any regrets about doing that, or you just enjoyed it the whole ride?
I am really enjoying. I love my job. I think if I could do it over again, kind of the career path or the preparation that I would pursue, probably would have focused more on genealogical research and on. I think I probably would have done my major in genealogy, gotten my degree in genealogy with a minor or an emphasis in biology.
Mm-hmm.
I think all throughout my undergraduate, it was a little frustrating because I was in the genetics program with all of these pre-med students and having to take biochemistry and organic chemistry and physiology, and thinking, I am never going to use any of this material. And I really, really enjoyed my genetics class. But other than that, most of my undergraduate degree was really more geared towards lab work, towards academia, towards pre-med. And so if I could do it over again, I think I would have focused more on my genealogy classes, gotten my major, a degree in that, and then gotten the background in genetics. So
kind of like swapping around what you did in a sense.
Yeah, kind of. But
yeah,
I mean, what I did works well enough, I guess.
So along the way, you must have picked up and a ton of books to have read. What are some of your favorite books, like either genealogy or otherwise? But I have a feeling you only read genealogy books.
Well, anymore, yeah. I'm trying to think. So I love biography books. One of the books that I just recently read that was fascinating was let's see, what was the exact title? It was Escape from Africa, the Boer Wars, and the Making of Winston Churchill. So I loved that book. One of my other favorite books is The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orski.
Yeah.
So those are some of my favorite non-genealogy books, I guess. Although, I don't know, I mean, if you if you, I feel like anything you read that's historic or historical fiction or biography, you can kind of tie back to genealogy anyway. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, those are some of my favorite books. I think. Let's see, genealogy-wise, as far as Spanish research, searching your Hispanic roots by George Rice Camp. He was one of my professors, and I really enjoyed some of reading through that. Trying to think what else. I use the. I learned a lot from the. Let's see, it's on the Researcher's Guide to American Genealogy. It's down there.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Quite a bit from that. I also like, let's see, where is that one? It's called Your Swedish Roots by Clementson and Anderson for Swedish genealogy. I feel like that has some great background and insight into the record sets, into the different types of things. One great one for Norwegian genealogy is, at least for the social history and the context, is Between Rocks and Hard Places.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Who
and then
that
one is by Anne Ernest Gesme. I'm probably murdering the names, but another favorite of mine for genealogy is the Genealogy Standards book, by the Board for Certification of Genealogists.
yes.
To live by,
Yes.
and really helps you to within the profession to consider how you're doing and to make sure that you're living up to those standards. So yeah, and for DNA, I think the best, in my opinion, currently out there are the Genetic Genealogy in Practice by Blaine Bettinger and Debbie Parker Wayne, as well as Family Tree Guide to Genetic. Let's see, is it I can't remember the exact name, but it's the Family Tree DNA Guide to Genetic Genealogy, I think, or to DNA and Genealogy. It's by Blaine Bettinger as well.
Got it. So, yeah, he's pretty prolific and has love reading what he writes and the work that he does on stuff on the DNA specifically.
Yeah, it's pretty great. So.
Yeah. So you've been doing a ton of research over the years. For you personally, what has been one of the most surprising or interesting discoveries that you can think of?
All right, you ready for a good story?
Yes, tell us.
Okay, so I think my all-time favorite discovery in my own personal family history was when I went on this study abroad with BYU we spent 2 months in Europe and spending time in archives, performing research. For the first month, we were doing tours in archives in France, Spain, Italy, and the Vatican. And then for the second month, we had self-directed time, so we could do whatever we want. I went back to southern France, where some of my ancestors came from, and I was researching a man named Joseph Ishante. And as I had been going to the archive in Pau. It's the Archives départementales des Pyrénées-Atlantiques. It's the regional archives, the department archives for that area. And I was researching in the archive, and the archivist, after about a week, she asked me, "What are you doing here? You know, you're an American, you're young, you don't speak French very well, and you know what are you researching?" And so I said, "Well, I'm researching this family, the family of Joseph Ishante." And she didn't know anything about it. But as I said that name, there was another researcher in the archive who sat up in their chair and said, "Oh, Joseph Ishante? Well, you should check out this article that a local history professor wrote on Joseph Ishante in the Genealogy magazine for the department about 15 years ago." They said, "How did you know that?" So
he remembered the article about the specific guy?
Yeah, he remembered the article about this specific guy. And so I look up the article, and it's 30 pages on my fifth great grandfather.
30 pages?
30 pages that this man had written about his life, about the historical context, about some of the records that he had found in the archives. So I was able to use it to transfer
Oh
to
my
those.
gosh.
And what was really neat about this was that Joseph Ishante was really interesting to this history professor because in his free time he engraved in stone, and he decorated the walls of his home with these engravings. And because of the efforts of this history professor, they actually made his home a historical monument.
No.
And they said, oh yeah, and you know, it's in this area. And so I said, well, I kind of want to go see the house.
Well, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
So I contacted a lady that I knew down in that region and said, hey, do you know anybody who's familiar with the local history that I could maybe talk to get some insight into where the house is, so that I can maybe get some good historical context? And she said, oh yeah, well, there's this priest, and he he has been the priest here in this valley for 60 years. And he's 60, and he is also an amateur genealogist, so he knows the genealogies of every family in the valley. So you contact him, and he might have some information for you. So I write this email to this 80-year-old priest, and he writes me back within 15 minutes. I said, hey, do you know anything about the Kumaril or the Ishante family? And he said, oh yeah, I know all about the Ishante family. They were very prominent here in the 17th century. You come down and stay with me at the monastery, and I'll take you to their house.
Oh my gosh.
So I went to the monastery. I stayed with him. The next morning, we went out into the French Pyrenees along these tiny country roads. He was telling me all these stories all along the way. So yeah, I remember when I had to hike 3 miles into the forest in order to get to this house. You're lucky there's a road now. And, you know. All of this stuff. And so we were climbing over garden walls under electric fences, and the whole time I'm thinking,
what?
Don't
you were climbing through fields and
we were climbing through fields and hiking down to the house, and the whole time I'm thinking, please don't, fall. I can't carry you 3 miles.
Well, I'm imagining that this priest is, I'm sure he's dressed normally, but I'm imagining he's in his his robes and
yeah.
or was he in his normal pants?
He was in his normal pants. Yeah.
Okay.
His exercise clothes.
Okay.
And so we hike down to Joseph Ishante's house, and he tells me, the house has been abandoned since the 60s, but I remember eating dinner in this house. I remember when it was still a living house.
Oh wow.
I knew the last person who owned it, and I knew all the family. So we get there, and most of the engravings had actually been destroyed because of dilapidation, because it was falling apart. But there was one engraving that was left right over the door, and it said, "Genealogical table of my deceased fathers and mothers, made by me, Joseph Ishante, according to my memory, in the year 1859.
No!
Yes. And so,
oh my gosh.
On his house is engraved this stone that takes his ancestry back to 1673.
And wait, so Joseph, when was Joseph alive?
So Joseph was born in 1777.
Okay.
He died in 1859. And during his life, he engraved this stone and put it on his house. And what's really neat is that the history professor actually argued that the stone wasn't his biological ancestry, that it was the genealogy of the house, because the house is so important in this, in the inheritance patterns in this region. But really, when I looked at it closer and I looked at the genealogy, I realized that the history professor had made a mistake. And that the genealogy in the stone is his biological genealogy, and I was able to prove that using the documentary evidence supporting that as well. So I think that's been my coolest genealogy discovery.
Yeah, I would say so. That'd be something hard to beat for sure.
Yeah, I'm still looking to beat that. I don't know.
I'd like to think that you got plenty of pictures.
Oh yes, I got plenty of pictures to go along. Unfortunately, this last time I was in France, we went 2 summers ago, and we went back to the house, and the stone is gone. So that was kind of sad. But at least I was able to get there to see it before it got removed, and
Yeah,
knows where it is
and you
now.
were able
So
to document it.
I was able to document it. So
Now you have a blog, right?
I personally do not have a blog, but I do guest posts on the blog for Legacy Tree.
Okay, so why don't you have a blog? Because the story you just told me would be fantastic, and a fantastic blog entry. And not only that, but the pictures you could share with it would be amazing. Have you written
Yeah.
that down at all, or?
I have. I've published it as part of the BYU family or by BYU History Magazine and Journal, and then I think BYU just did another piece on it. They like that story. So.
Yeah.
A few times. So yeah, I've done it a few times for BYU, but I haven't written it up for any journals yet. I've been planning to do that when I have time. So,
well, thank you for sharing the story with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to share it.
Jeez, that's a great. I want to see the picture of the stone now. So can you just like email me a picture of the stone? I just want to see it.
Email you a picture of the stone. I'm happy to do that.
So, all right. So interesting ancestors. Is there anyone you want to meet? Would you want to meet this Joseph guy, or is there somebody you'd rather meet more?
You know, I think Joseph Ishante would be a really interesting guy to meet.
Yeah.
He lived during the French Revolution, and he lived in an interesting part of this part of France because, I mean, traditionally, that part of France considered themselves more Béarnais than they did French. They were their own little region. They spoke their own language. I think Joseph Ishante would be really interesting to get to know because he lived during a very interesting time of French history, and he wrote about that in some of his engravings that he put on his house. Yeah, he'd say, you know, him
so
to
like
the
his
nation.
house was his blog.
Yeah, kind of. It puts a whole new meaning to posting something on your wall, right? I mean, Joseph literally did.
Oh, you went there. That was fantastic.
So, I mean, he really did put you know, a record of his life on these walls, and it's also cool to think in some of those engravings he said, let's see, he said. To my posterity, and so it's really interesting to me to be able to read that and think, hey, I'm a part of this. This was in part written to me, and he wrote proverbs. He'd write, you know, the things that he thought. He was a shepherd philosopher, and I think one of my favorite quotes is. That he engraved was, "Render yourself capable of all, for you do not know for what God has destined you." And I thought that's a really interesting thought. You know, just prepare yourself for whatever comes in the future, because you never know what's going to be coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, I really like that, and I like how that was worded in a sense. But I love learning new things, and whether it's in genealogy or otherwise, and things I learned decades ago, I'm able to apply to some problem or something in the future or when I run it. So I really appreciate that quote.
Yeah. So. But yeah, Joseph would be really interesting to get to know. If I had to choose somebody else, I guess my other second choice would be I'd be interested in getting to know Carl Johan Capson. He was one of my Swedish ancestors. He joined the Mormon Church. He was one of the first Mormons in Sweden. He traveled to Utah at a time when it was not common for Swedes to migrate to North America. And he, you know, went across the plains, and he actually worked for Brigham Young as his gardener. And I think it would be pretty interesting to get to know a little bit more about Carl Johan Capson.
So Carl was he heard about Mormonism just when the movement was brand new, it sounds like.
Yeah, so let's see, he grew up in Sweden. His father was a gardener. One of his older brothers moved to Denmark and heard about the Mormon Church in Denmark in the 1840s.
Wow.
And then his brother came back and converted several members of the Kapson family in southern Sweden. And then Carl Johan Kapson was one of the first leaders of the Mormon Church in Sweden when it was still illegal. He actually got fined for becoming a Mormon, and held a secret meetings in his barn to host the missionaries and learn about the Mormon Church. And then
he had a Mormon speakeasy going.
yeah. So I think it would be interesting to learn more about his life.
Now, did he die in Utah or did he
He
die
died
back
in Utah. Yeah.
Okay.
So.
All right. Where do you like to research? I would imagine you're used to sitting in your office all day long, but is there another place that you just would love to sit down and research, like if you could?
So I love researching in the Department archives in southern France.
Oh, bet you do.
I've been back a few times, so I love doing research there. I think some other places that I like to research, the Family History Library is a fantastic place to research and to just have access to all of those records. But I think probably the most frequent place that I research is my own desk in my own home. So,
So when you first started getting into genealogy, what is something like if you could go back and tell your 8-year-old self, hey, make sure you take care of this, make sure you do this, or make sure you know this, what would that be?
I think that I probably would have encouraged my 8-year-old self to let's see, to record the stories from my grandfathers, to ask them more questions, to find out more about their lives. I mean, my grandfather did keep a very good journal, and I've started reading through that, and there are some really interesting stories about World War II and his involvement in the Navy and accompanying prisoners of war back to the United States. And I would love to have learned more about that and to have gotten better clarification on some of those stories.
Well, there's another several blog entries for you too, just in that, that journal from the sound of it. Man, I am loving your Joseph ancestor. I'm just thinking, like, man, if you could go talk to him and actually see what that house looked like as he was carving on the walls. Man, that's awesome. I'm digging that.
Talk about a thoughtful post to your wall, right? You have to grave it.
Exactly.
You can't just post it, right?
So did he ever carve anything like, oh, I had a hamburger for lunch or something?
No, I don't think he did. I think he maybe prioritized his space a little bit more.
Like a kitten, carved a kitten picture. Or playing the harpsichord.
Yeah.
All right, so you attend conventions because you and I actually met at Jamboree this year for the first time. I would imagine that we probably walked right past each other at Roots Tech a couple of times, but we actually met face to face at Jamboree. So what conferences are you going to be at next?
So let's see, the next conference immediately coming is Salt Lake Institute of Genealogy, or SLIG.
Yep.
So I'll be teaching there as part of the DNA and the GPS course, as well as I'll be doing a case for the practicum, Advanced Evidence Analysis practicum. So looking forward to that. After that, I'll be at Roots Tech. I'll be giving a few presentations there. And then I am going to be at Jamboree.
Yes.
Next June. So while I am my while I'm in school, my wife and I have made the decision that I only can attend certain conferences because I have
Oh,
to prioritize my time. So once I graduate, I will be able to maybe attend a little bit more conferences. So
because you have a new family member.
yes, I do. I have a new family member, and we need to prioritize the time wisely.
So you went through the application process for Roots Tech. What did you think about the new video submission that they tried out?
So it was interesting to me because I'm also working on my master's degree right now in instructional design and educational technology.
Hmm. Yeah.
And one of the things that we had talked about in, as part of our class was if you make, you know, if you make your requirements such that only people who are familiar with technology would be able to present on technology and genealogy, then that may serve a dual purpose
Yeah.
in kind of filtering that. So that was my initial thought. I don't know. I didn't have too much of a problem with creating the videos, but yeah, I thought that was an interesting choice on
Yeah.
our part.
Yeah.
So
So I haven't seen that before.
yeah,
I don't know. I
so
don't know if anybody else has done that before yet. So that might be a
yeah,
interesting first.
yeah.
So where could people find you on the web?
So you can find me on Facebook,
Hmm.
although I am only occasionally on Facebook. My my wife and I have an agreement to help us stay very productive, so we only log each other into Facebook.
Oh
Um,
wow! So you guys have swapped like passwords for each other,
yeah,
or
yeah,
created passwords for one another, and the other
yeah,
one doesn't know what it is.
yep. So occasionally, if I have to do some research on Facebook, I'm researching under my wife's account, so she gets weird things. All of these ads for Genealogy Bank and other companies that are saying, "Yeah, you should." Now, where did that come from? But yeah, you can also find me on LinkedIn. You can find me through Legacy Tree Genealogists and on the APG website
Hmm.
through I have a profile there. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
where you can
and
find me, I guess.
you take on clients like we talked about earlier, and
I do.
if someone is interested, they can contact you through the AP through Legacy Tree or through APG.
Yeah. So if they're interested in working with me, I'd love to help you on your cases. You can contact me either through the APG website, or you can submit a query through Legacy Tree
Mhm.
Genealogists and just say, "Hey, I'd like to work with Paul." So
Cool. Well, Paul, this was a great interview. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking
thank
the
you so
time
much for
to.
having me.
Yeah, you got anything else to say before we sign off here this evening?
I don't know. I think the only thing that I would add is, genetic genealogy is, I feel like an important part of the future of genealogical research. It's increasingly becoming considered part of genealogical proof. That if you
Yeah.
don't consider DNA evidence, at least that um, you are not achieving genealogical proof. And so I just encourage everybody listening to explore genetic genealogy, to learn all you can about it, and to apply it to your own other specialties. I don't think I know you don't have to be a great geneticist in order to be able to understand genetic genealogy and apply it to your research, but you
Mhm.
absolutely, in order to be a good genetic genealogist, you absolutely have to be a good genealogist and a good genealogical researcher. So
Yeah, I know it's been very key for some of my research in solving some problems I wouldn't have solved otherwise, just because the records weren't there. Um,
mhm.
so yeah, great advice. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, and have a wonderful evening.
I will. All right, everybody. Well, that was the show for this evening, but don't worry, we've got another one coming up in a few weeks, and it'll be the beginning of December. And I get to interview Melissa Barker. I am very excited about that too. So, everybody, have a great Thanksgiving, and thanks for tuning in. And we will see you next time. Take care.